All right. Hello, everyone. I am here with Dr. Tony Cicoria to talk about some of the questions that he gets asked about his near-death experience. And one thing that is really fascinating that he just told me is that many people who are listening to his music sometimes pick up on energy. Perhaps they see colors or they have a vision or they connect energetically with the music that he's bringing through. And that's really interesting. So, could you tell me more about that experience?
Sure. It's very common for me to have someone come up after a performance and describe feelings or visual effects that they see or experience when the music is playing. I've actually had people ask if they can come to my house and lay on the floor underneath the piano so they can experience the vibration of the music, which in some way connects with their brain and with their spiritual side. And exactly what is happening, I don't know, but I've had lots of people draw pictures of some of the things that they saw or experienced, and it's always an energetic kind of experience where they say they feel some type of energy or um, it takes them to a different place. And I've often wondered, based on this, what actually is in the music that I don't understand. And I think that there's a lot that is unknown about what music does to our energy fields and to our energy bodies or spiritual selves. And there's lots of research that's been ongoing about different organ systems in the body are tuned to a certain frequency. And if you can recreate that frequency, you can heal those organ systems.
Yeah.
Something that's really kind of in its infancy, but is ongoing research.
It's fascinating because some people are using color to help heal. One of the other speakers at the summit, Jose Hernandez, uses color to help people calm down and heal, and then sound frequency. I think we're having a much larger view of healing. And as a doctor, how does that strike you? I mean, this idea of energy workers sending vibrational energy, sound, color.
You know, years ago when I first started in this business, it was very cut and dried. Everything was black and white. And and what you came away with was the feeling that something's missing. And after I had my near death experience and I went through all of the things that I went through and came to realize that we have a higher energy self, that we are we are nothing but energy and we are connected to every other part of the universe. And so now I look at all of that very differently, and I truly believe that healing is different. Healing is not, somebody comes in with a problem and you say, oh, take this medicine and you'll feel better. I think that is a very Western kind of philosophy, and the Eastern philosophy that's come out of places like China and India and the Far East really presents a whole different perspective of how our bodies are in tune with our energy selves, and and that there are many ways to get healing that have nothing to do with taking a pill one day or having some traditional medical treatments. So I think that there's a lot of breadth in development of what you would call alternate um, healing therapies, energy therapies, and I have gone through a lot of that stuff just in terms of experimentation. And I'm a third degree Reiki practitioner. I wanted to see what all of that meant and how it made you feel. And one of the things that came out of my near-death experience was I can feel people's aura. And although I can only see them in selected people, I can feel it incredibly well. And I can tell when there's something wrong because there's an electrical disturbance that's created overlying whatever area that is. So if they're having a problem with their heart, it'll be like passing your hand through an area of static electricity, and which is the best description of it that I can come up with.
Yeah, I wonder if this is an after effect of near death experiences, or at least some of us, because I do feel energetically sensitive. I can tune in even ahead of time to situations, and I can concentrate on a person and kind of read the energy. And at the time of my near death experience, when I saw angels working through my surgeons and working on my body, sending this energy, I'd never heard of Reiki. Now it's kind of common, in many situations, to know Reiki practitioners. But before your near death experience, had you heard of energy workers using, that kind of power?
If I heard about it, I completely ignored it. I was a hard scientist. I had started in this business because I wanted to be one of those crazy guys in the bottom of a building doing research. And out of that desire, I went into medicine. But I always had a very rigorous way of looking at the world and life, and it was all neat and orderly. And life is not anything like that. And so it was a rude awakening for me to come to realize that life is more than the sum of its parts.
Yes, interesting. And when I think about this and I think about how you started viewing the world differently, some people might call it being more being an empath, that you pick up on the emotions or the moods of others. And I definitely was not like that before my near-death experience, but I was very much like that, so much so after my near-death experience that I could walk onto a bus and feel the energy of different people on the bus. Did you feel disoriented in those first couple of years adjusting to a new way of being?
It was very disorienting, and it was a real challenge because I didn't understand what I was feeling, and there wasn't a lot written back then. And so I got whatever I could get my hands on to read and try to understand. I pursued that. And even then, that was difficult. There were a handful of books. Daniel Brinkley's book was one of the first ones that I picked up, and he had had a similar experience being struck by lightning. And and then Ray Moody and just a host of other people that I ran into and eventually got tied up with the IONS conference folks. And that opened a whole nother door of, and a whole nother layer of knowledge. And then from that, I started to look around and see, okay, there's a lot of people out there that have had similar experiences, and there are energy practitioners, And I started really investigating some of this stuff. But certainly one of the common themes of people who've had near-death experiences that there's been a fundamental change in their energy interaction with their surroundings, and that those surroundings being with other people, with other things, with knowing that there's so much more to perceive that normally doesn't get past the conscious brain. The subconscious brain, the conscious brain, I think, are always in this big tug of war of who's in control. And the conscious brain likes to think that it is, and it only allows a certain amount of information to make its way through, and the subconscious brain picks up all of this stuff, and unfortunately a lot of it doesn't get through, either because the conscious brain thinks, well, you really don't want to know this, or it has nothing to do with reality, but I think that we are much more aware of a lot of things that we are consciously not aware of. And I think your example of going on a bus and feeling energy of people around you is very germane to what we're talking about. For example, you can walk into a room, and if there's an evil presence in that room, you know it right away. And you think, well, that's kind of strange. But think about animals, and a dog can walk into anywhere, and if there is an evil presence, it is on guard. It knows exactly where it is, and it knows it from the minute it walked in the room. And so what is it that they're feeling, and why don't we? And I think the why don't we part is because we choose to ignore most of those things, or we've been taught that that doesn't matter, that's not important. But it is, and I think we've been denying that energy interaction. And unfortunately, it takes something like a near-death experience to make you realize that, hey, wake up and smell the roses. There's a lot more here going on.
I think more people need to be taught to tune into that energy if they're not already, and to trust themselves. That's something that, I believe is important, that it is, like you said, it's inherent with an evil presence. I have a dog story, two quick dog stories. One is, the EVPs that people can get from ghosts. They'll overhear, something that said, well, someone sent me one of those on a computer file, and I played it. And my very calm dog, a German Shepherd, every hair on her body stood up, and she freaked out and ran out of the room when she heard that ghost, that was on the EVP. And I was like, I guess that is, something, from another realm. And then another time, someone broke into our garage, and we had maintenance. It was a townhome, so there was maintenance people coming in all the time, and workers, and she'd never attacked anyone. When that person was in, there was no difference between the people. She grabbed his leg and started biting him, and it just went into attack mode because she knew he wasn't meant to be there. So I guess there's that inherent protectiveness and knowing that a dog has.
Sure, and I think that we have it, but. And that's what my point about the conscious brain versus the unconscious brain. The unconscious brain is very aware of all of those things and would like you to be aware as well. But the conscious brain tends to snuff out a lot of that information because it's conditioned to do that. And I think your point about people need to be taught is really critical. And I think that that's one of the things that all of us who have gone through this can start to make people realize that there's a lot more that they need to learn about being alive and being able to sense all of those other things that are happening around you.
And it's a balance, though, isn't it? It's a gift and a curse, because the beauty of it is I know that I was so much more alive after my near-death experience. I could enjoy a tree, a flower, the sky, and just feel the beauty of God pulsating through, nature. But then if I was hurt or attacked by someone, or, like harmed in any way, just the energy of negativity from people, it kind of slapped me around a little. And I remember, especially, just those moments when I was in shock.
Yeah, I think that, the energy that other people pass out, whether knowingly or unknowingly, is something that you become acutely aware of. And that sometimes is difficult. I don't like to be around negativity, and it becomes very offensive and uncomfortable. But yet there's a lot of times it's not an option, and you just have to learn how to deal with a whole new set of parameters, so to speak.
Yeah, so I'm curious, when you play the music, do you feel that it's coming from an unconscious place? Do you feel that you're bringing in um, energy from the other side?
You know, it's clear to me that the music comes from someplace else. And I have often likened it to my brain being a receiver, and I'm just listening into the channel where the music exists. And it has come to me in absolute torrents of information. And I've often thought, it's coming too fast. How could I possibly write any of this down or remember it? But it's all there. And it's almost like somebody took and downloaded a file into my brain and said, okay, here's number 3, and when you figure out how to handle this, then write it down. And so a lot of it's been like that. And it's, for example, I was, one day I was sitting at the piano and I was working on my piano lesson. And it was a Brahms piece based on somebody else. I'm blanking right now. But anyway, and as I started to do it, I'm playing the music, and all of a sudden I'm hearing the music in symphony. And it was so overwhelming, I stopped playing, but the music didn't. And this whole first movement of a symphony seemed like it was downloaded into my brain. And it's just sitting there while I figure out how to write it.
Hmm.
And I've had, a lot of the music that I've done has had a similar kind of effect. It's just this very emotional downloading of huge amounts of information, and then the laborious process of writing it down, which is, for somebody who's not musically trained, is an arduous task. But as time has gone on, I've gotten a little more accustomed to doing it, and so it's not as difficult. But early on, it was a huge challenge.
Yes, and I would like to remind people who are watching this on YouTube that you can hear Tony's full story and our full conversation at the second annual Near Death Experience Online Summit through the University of Heaven. And he goes into great detail about his near death experience, and then that change to writing music from after hearing music from the heavens, which is just amazing, really. I mean, it's quite a gift. And I think those gifts are what fascinate people when they hear about near-death experiences, because it's a verifiable change. I mean, we often hear about the non-judgment or, other after effects, but, what you've been given is kind of fantastic in a way. It gives hope.
Absolutely. And I feel very fortunate to have had the experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it is fascinating. But for those who are watching, please just click the links below to hear Tony's full story. And I hope that you enjoyed some of this conversation. But thank you very much, and may you be